Let me take you on a little journey. I was a Pokemon kid. We used to trade cards on the lunch tables. We used to play the games in our teal Game Boy colors that we bought at Toys R Us. When I was very young, Pokemon was a really big deal. I know I'm not alone in this, but Pokemon was probably my most formative gaming experience that I've ever had. When I was around 8 years old, it kind of took over the world there for a bit. So 20-ish years later, I decided to replay those old games from Generation 1 all the way up to the newest entry. I'd moved on from the game sometime around Generation 3 because it had become uncool somewhere along the way, and I was self-conscious. So I thought it would be fun to go back and see how these games evolved as I played through them all. But I was wrong. I was disappointed to see that the games didn't evolve, or innovate, or even really change in any meaningful way. It's the same combat, the same 3 starters, the same badges, and nearly the same plot of every game. I was pretty surprised and let down by how little Game Freak had innovated on that Pokemon Red and Blue formula that I knew so well, and now looking at footage from the gameplay of the latest gen, things look pretty much exactly the same. I mean, granted, it's all 3D now, but that hasn't exactly made the games look better. If anything, the games are uglier than with the old 2D sprites. In my trip down memory lane, I discovered that every Pokemon game is a copy of a copy of a copy. The battle system is almost unchanged since 1996. Some entries add a new catalog of animals to enslave and a gimmick to be forgotten in the next game, but that's it. And with the reliability of a clock, the fans will cry out about a lack of quality with respect to modern gaming standards, but then buy the new games anyway, and nothing ever really changes. So why won't Game Freak innovate on these classic games? As I see it, there are 3 main reasons. It's nostalgia, it's a fundamental misunderstanding of what Pokemon is, and it's Nintendo. To each of these points, and this is true for any product really, it's our fault as fans and consumers for voting with our wallets, and we will come back to that again later. I'm no better than the rest of you. I bought that Legends Arceus game because I thought it would be a change in direction for the series, and when I played it, I found a fun enough system for capturing the animals, paired with a terrible story, even by anime standards, the same simplistic battle mechanics, and some meaningless new gimmick, exactly 7 new Pokemon, absent art direction, and laughably antiquated graphics. So it's probably obvious already, but this video is going to be pretty negative. So before I catch any Poke fans typing angry comments at me, let's keep in mind, this is not a small franchise, and it's not your personality that's on the line here. Pokemon is literally the biggest intellectual property in the world, and the games are fucking Happy Meal toys compared to the rest of modern gaming, so we don't have to defend them. They don't need your help. So let's get into it. Making no excuses, why is every Pokemon game exactly the same? Speaking of Happy Meal toys, we have to confront the uncomfortable reality that Pokemon is for children. This is not a dig at people who enjoy nostalgia. I'm in my 30s, which means I was in elementary school when Pokemon Red and Blue exploded in popularity in the United States. I still go back and play the old games every couple of years just to remember how it felt in 1998 when I played them for the first time. There's nothing wrong with that, and we're allowed to like things for any reason, but still, these games are for kids. I'm a prime example of somebody that played these games as a child, but we cannot sit here and defend the creative decisions of a multi-billion-dollar company to insulate ourselves from the knowledge that the thing we like is ultimately made for a very young audience. While it's probably healthy to acknowledge that, just know that if you like these games, I am not making fun of you. Quick intermission here. I am very explicitly only talking about Pokemon games and game design and design choices and whatever. Actually, most of the Pokemon fandom, even the adult fandom, is a surprisingly wholesome community. No shade on anybody that likes Pokemon in any capacity, whether it's the games or the stuffed animals or the cards or whatever. I think it's all fine and great. I'm just This is my critique of the games and why I think the games are all the same and totally stagnant as a gaming franchise. I just thought it was worth pointing that out because, yeah, this video is pretty negative, but overall, Pokemon's a pretty positive thing in my experience. Okay, back to it. The games being made for kids almost explains all of the complaints that adult fans have of these games. Like, yes, the graphics are comically dated, but that's because little kids don't give a shit about graphical fidelity or textures or frame rates. They're here for the pretty colors and the cute creatures. And yes, the core gameplay is nearly identical to the games I fell in love with in the 90s, but it's that simple for a reason, so that kids can have fun with the game. If Pokemon ever became too difficult or complicated, Nintendo wouldn't be able to count on acquiring more of its core audience. And despite the legitimate complaints that many fans of these games have, they still turn an insane profit. Amidst a wave of bad press and shitty reviews in 2022, Scarlet and Violet sold almost 30 million copies, which is a mega hit by any standard. Some of that market is obviously children or adults with children, but a lot of it is grown adults who just enjoy Pokemon. So it becomes this weird double standard among the fans, where adults will purchase games that they know aren't going to live up to modern gaming standards, but then they'll complain that the game fully delivers on what we all expected out of it. And this creates a limitation for Game Freak as a developer. They're in a position where they can't make a game that's too difficult or too complex because it will alienate the children, and they can't make a game that's too groundbreaking or too different from the originals because the adult fans will raise a stink over it. So they're put into this corner where they kind of have to make the same tired game over and over again, offending as few people as possible. The sad part to me is that some developers actually have tried to innovate over the years. Each time these attempts have been met with either a lukewarm reception from fans or diminished sales numbers. These attempts are usually in the spin-off Pokemon games, and none of those games apparently did well enough for Game Freak to consider pivoting the formula away from what the main series is. Quick note on this data, this was clearly made before Legends Arceus came out. Legends Arceus sold like 14 million copies, which is a lot, although not a crazy amount by Pokemon standards, which is probably why the new game they're making is bringing in the Legends Arceus catching mechanics, because those were pretty popular. So while the devs are in a strange place with how the market reacts to their games, I really don't want this to sound like an excuse for them. It's not like these spin-off games or the main series games are getting too much love. The animations and models are still being copied from previous games. The textures would have looked out of place 10 years ago. All the games are really buggy, they all run like garbage on the Switch hardware, and they all still don't have voice acting.
As part of the Survey Corps, you are on a mission to catalog and research.
Game Freak is basically doing the bare minimum, and they still can't be counted on to ship a solid product.
Game Freak, our first easy F. EA, controversial, potential, F, whatever. Game Freak, easy, easy, easy F. The most awful developers in the game. They're the most talentless devs on the planet. They have the easiest job in the world. Just go into the office once every 3 years, Control-C, Control-V a Pokemon game, call it a day. And they can't even do that half the time. The first time they finally tried was with Arceus, which I'm happy about. You know, I'm glad they're finally trying new things. But it wasn't amazing. Hopefully they perfect the formula going forward, make it better. But that was the first time they tried something even remotely different for the last 15 years. Remember when they made the big jump to the Switch with Sword and Shield? And they just took out a ton of Pokemon and left the game exactly the fucking same? Hype. What a great group.
I have seen people defend Game Freak because they only have the budget and the time that Nintendo gives them. And we'll talk about Nintendo later, believe me. But in an era where indie projects can look like this...
Time for the main event.
Stupid boy. I told you nobody gets out of here.
Or this... Or this.
Simon.
I'm not buying it anymore. Pokemon is by far the worst looking first-party Nintendo franchise but also makes the most money. So let's not feel too badly for the developers. Modern Zelda games look like this. Modern Mario games look like this. They constantly push the envelope with hardware, they innovate on mechanics, they redefine entire genres. Modern Pokemon looks like this.
The Survey Core,
with gameplay that's identical to the first game in the series. Catering to children, combined with the nostalgia dollar, has allowed Pokemon as a gaming franchise to completely stagnate. But are you ready for the dirty secret about that? It's that the quality of these games actually doesn't matter at all. I realize I'm not really breaking new ground with this video yet. It's a pretty popular talking point among Pokemon YouTube that the games are creatively bankrupt and have been churning out slop sequels since at least Generation 5. Obviously, I mostly agree with this, but what I feel many in this discussion are missing is that Pokemon is not about Pokemon games. Pokemon is a brand. In fact, it's the world's biggest brand. The next largest video game franchise is Mario, which is like a third the size. Pokemon's bigger than Marvel, it's bigger than Star Wars, and honestly, it's not really close. This is a pretty well-known fact, but it's not just that Pokemon produces more wealth than the nation of Costa Rica, it's that the games themselves are not made with the goal of creating good games. They exist to market new creatures. So every generation, the Nintendo art department cranks out like 100 or so new designs that get turned into toys and stickers and commercials and cards and animes and movies and so on. Each new wave of Pokemon adds more mascots to the roster for people to buy more things, and the games really lean into this. The games are far more part of a large-scale marketing campaign than they are games. The slogan for the series isn't "gotta beat the Elite Four" or "gotta make these animals fight because they seem cool with it." It's "gotta catch 'em all." And it's been this way since the beginning. This guy Brandon sums up the idea pretty well, in my opinion.
Back in the 90s when Pokemon first came out, all you'd ever hear is... And I mean, this message was drilled into your head. It was even the subtitle of the game. Well, in the US at least. In Japan, however, the slogan was never actually "Gotta catch 'em all." "Gotta catch 'em all" was the slogan that ended up being chosen by the US localization marketing team. However, there were other slogans that were considered as well, such as "Catch 'em if you can," which was even used in early press kits sent out by Nintendo of America in 1998, which was right before Pokemon was released in the US, and was even used in the early version of the Pokemon theme song, further showing that catching them all wasn't supposed to be the main focus. But they went with "Gotta catch 'em all" simply because it was the better slogan in terms of selling all things Pokemon.
I don't know if this point even needs further proof, but here's a couple more points anyway. The game with the largest player base, by an enormous margin by the way, is Pokemon Go, a game that has no story, or end goal, or really any actual gameplay, and is almost entirely focused on collecting. It's just one never-ending toy commercial, and it's actually fucking genius. Also, in 30 years of game development, the main series games have not innovated on their basic mechanics beyond battle gimmicks that only last one generation and have very little impact on the actual gameplay. Mega evolutions, Gigantamaxing, terrestrializing, they stick around for one game and then they get thrown in the trash for the next sequel. The stories of these games are parables for children about being nice to your friends or the dangers of Italians. Except for Gen 4, which is about defending the world from the ethereal, nightmarish terrors that exist in the black void of another dimension. I'm being dramatic, of course, it's just a Mewtwo plot again. But all this low-effort recycled content just proves the point that the games aren't really made to be taken seriously by anyone, and they're just another branch in a colossal merchandising machine. And you know what? As frustrating as this can be for the adult fans, it's basically fine. This system works. People like Pokemon games, perhaps because they aren't especially groundbreaking or challenging or different. The games sell extremely well, children and adults buy stuffed animals and stickers, and everybody is happy. Well, almost everybody. For the people who do want more from these games, or go create their own gaming experiences with Pokemon, there is a darker side. In 2016, a game dev called Pkmn was working on a ROM hack for Pokemon Crystal, which came out in the year 2000. The game was set in an original region with 200 original creature designs and 20 badges that the player could claim. During development, Kotaku covered the game, praising its originality, enhanced quality of life features, creativity, and heightened difficulty. Pkmn had named the game Pokemon Prism and worked on it for 8 years before Nintendo sent them a cease and desist order 4 fucking days before it was set to release for free online. This same year, fan game Pokemon Uranium had 160 new species, online trading and battling, which was unheard of at the time, an original story, and was even nominated at the Game Awards for Best Fan Creation. The game spent 9 years in development and received 500,000 downloads, so Nintendo sent the creators a cease and desist and shut the project down. And this is all despite the game mods being free, the originals no longer being supported, made, or sold by Nintendo, and those original game files being 16 years old at the time. In the wake of these events, the Pokemon modding community went underground. Hackers still make Pokemon ROM hacks today, but compared to modding other games, it's become like modern day bootlegging. To this day, it is still common practice on the internet to tiptoe around ever saying the domain names of sites that host ROMs anywhere on the internet for fear of legal reprisal from Nintendo. If you've never downloaded a fan mod before, it's generally not considered a big deal or a breach of intellectual property rights. Fan mods are accepted as a pretty positive thing by most developers. Some developers even openly endorse modding because it breathes life into old games after the dev team has moved on to other things. Game Freak and Nintendo are not like this. Nintendo's legal department is notoriously vicious. They target modders and ROM hack creators who do all their work for free just to share their love of Pokemon with everybody. But it isn't just them. Nintendo have also targeted streamers playing modded games, hosts of unofficial Super Smash Bros. Tournaments, emulator developers, and even games using all original assets like Palworld. I could go on, I won't. Nintendo has an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to their intellectual property protection practices. You can see it all there, I'll link it below. Basically, Nintendo are bullies. They're a huge corporation, and they send their legal dogs after anyone that tries to share their old games, even though Game Freak doesn't work on these games anymore, and Nintendo doesn't give anyone a way to play them legally. There are exactly 2 ways a person can play an old main series Pokemon game. You have to buy the cartridge and the game system, which are now antiques and are valued at collector's prices, since Nintendo doesn't produce their old consoles or handhelds anymore. This transaction has nothing to do with Nintendo, by the way. They make 0 money off it. The only other option is that you can download it for free from the internet, which is legally kind of shaky, for which Nintendo will publicly cut off your balls. Nintendo also makes 0 money off that transaction. Now, there is a very obvious reason why Nintendo are such enormous dicks about their IP. It's because the new games are exactly like the old games, and if you could play the old games, you wouldn't even bother with the new games. So they run a legal manhunt for anybody that tries to share their old game files. They assassinate their competition with their enormous legal team. They actively restrict your ability to play the games that they made back when anyone working there had a soul, so that they can continue to churn out this gaming slop that has less polish than most solo indie projects. They literally put a Game Boy emulator on the eShop that doesn't include the main series Pokemon games. It's not like they don't have the technology. They purposefully omitted the main series games because it would create competition for Nintendo's own dog water product. Nintendo, with their Pokemon IP, is disgustingly anti-consumer. They have a total monopoly on their market, and they abuse this to no end. The part of it that's genuinely sad, because these are just games, it's just a hobby. It's fine. But the part that's genuinely sad is that real people love these games and want them to be better and have occasionally suffered real life consequences for trying to improve the thing that they love. The gaming community gives companies like EA a lot of flack for monetizing every inch of their products, and rightly so. But Nintendo easily deserves this same level of disdain. They still sell 2 copies of the same game, so some people will buy 2 games instead of 1. If Activision made you buy an entire second Call of Duty game to use the M4 or whatever, the gaming community would leave their bedrooms in protest. But when Nintendo does it, nobody bats an eye. Nintendo coasts on nostalgia and the family-friendly image associated with their brand, keeping a stuffed Pikachu in the right hand and a knife in the left. Here's the truth of the matter. Every Pokemon game is the same because we let Nintendo stop trying. Nintendo is awful, but they only get away with being shitty because of us. It's your fault and it's my fault for coughing up our money for the latest slop when we know they don't care about these games and they don't give the devs the time or the money or the creative freedom to make these games any good. Mario and Zelda had to overcome their competitors with innovation and quality games that the market responded to. Pokemon never had a rival, and as a result, the quality bled out over the years, but sales never really dropped off. So the massive corporation did what any smart massive corporation would do. They spent as little money as possible to keep the market happy. But they forget, we are the market, and we make the rules. So what can you do? Well, you can stop buying games that you know will suck from a corporation that hates you. The latest spin-off title is supposed to release in October. Apparently, it will reintroduce Mega Evolutions. It will use the same catching system from Legends Arceus. It will take place in the city from Pokemon X and Y, and it will feature exactly 0 new Pokemon. If that isn't recycling content, I really don't know what is. I'll bet you $1 right here, right now. There won't be voice acting in this one either. You can shake on it. You can also support the modding community, which has been innovating pretty steadily from their internet speakeasy, where they can't talk about what they do, but you can find it pretty easily if you go looking. ROM hacks are often based on older generations, mostly Gens 3, 4, and 5, and they usually incorporate newer mechanics, quality of life features, expanded Pokédexes with original sprites and artwork, new stories and characters, and usually heightened difficulty. All of that is thanks to the hard work of the fan community, and it's all free. If you've never thought about playing a ROM hack before, don't, because it's fucking illegal. But if you do, I recommend starting with Radical Red. It's excellent. That's all I have. Remember, you are allowed to like things for any reason, or no reason, but never let anyone make you feel bad about your hobby. Thank you. Also, emulation isn't exactly illegal, I was exaggerating. As I understand it, downloading ROM files is illegal, but downloading emulators or ripping files from the games you already own isn't illegal, but do your own research, I'm not a lawyer. Also, I'm in no way advocating for piracy or stealing Nintendo's intellectual property, although I do think that they're scumbags and deserve it. You shouldn't do that. Okay, bye.